number of people. I believe we can get started for the Astronomy Cafe. Two items here. We have a video from the Edmonton Center about their observatory, which will take up about 20 minutes. And also Ken has some pictures that he'd like to show. Before we get started on that, is there any official business? Anybody from the national office or local office have anything to bring up for the members? I hear nothing.
I can talk a little bit about the star party coming up and stuff like that for FDAO.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jim, there's one SIG this week, and that's a citizen science SIG.
Very good. And will you be sending out a notice about that, David?
It's already been sent out. Anybody who doesn't know anything about it, just send me an email and I can send you an invite.
Okay, very good. Lauri, could you go ahead and talk about the star party?
Okay, sure. So thanks to people for supporting us on last Saturday for this pancake breakfast that we had. It was a fundraiser, part of the fundraising campaign for the FDAO for our school programs. And we had well over 100 people in the pouring rain. It was just brutal. So people came in absolutely drenched, but it was fun, and a couple of the younger people stayed back in the kitchen for over 2 hours and flipped pancakes and made waffles and did all that kind of stuff. And we tried to keep everybody happy and cheerful. And Dennis Crabtree came in as Santa, and gave some little gifts to the kids, and that was good. David came along, but he wasn't able to put anything up outside. That's for sure. That didn't work at all. So that was fun. So thanks to everybody there. And then this coming Saturday, we have our last star party of 2023, and we're changing the time on this one to 6 to 9. And thinking that we might be able to get a few more families and younger people if it's not quite so late. And the weather isn't all that great, and we aren't going to be doing it quite as long as we normally do. And it is going to be for the winter solstice. So we're doing a little bit on the solstice, and then kind of a fun thing is to have a debate about Pluto. And we've got 2 young people. Some of you would know Ruhi from the university, and then Alex Cowan, who does some of the school programs, and they're going to duke it out about whether or not Pluto should still be a planet or not. All with tongue in cheek and all kind of a fun thing to do. And we'll have lots of treats and things for people to eat. And if it's nice, I don't know. I think it's supposed to be cloudy, but anybody that would like to come along, please do. And we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you around. So our fundraiser goes to the end of December. And what we're trying to do is to raise enough money that we could walk around Pluto if we wanted to. And so we're kind of looking at about $7,800 that we would like to raise. And anybody that would like to put in a few dollars, that would be really nice. A couple of us, or 2 or 3 of us actually, are supporting Don Moffat as he does his runs. And we're supporting him for every kilometer that he runs, so that will also add up. He does about 50 kilometers a week, and we're just kind of going to support him that way too. So lots of different kinds of things happening. So thanks, everybody. That's all for me.
Thank you. Where would that event be happening again, Lauri?
It'll be up at the center.
It will be.
Up at the center on the 16th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody has any other reports, Chris, or well, David, you've already spoken. Let's see, Ken, you said you had some pictures you'd like to show. Could you bring those up, please? Not sure if we still have Ken here, so.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
This, are you seeing this okay?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is the Elephant Nebula, which is about 2,400 light years away in the constellation of Cepheus. Designated IC 1396. And this is done in the Hubble palette. And the other one I have to show is a starless image of the Wizard Nebula, which is NG 7380. Discovered in 1787 by Caroline Herschel. And I was showing it a week ago to my nephew or grandnephew in Vancouver, and he starts picking out people in it, like little men. He picked out 2 or 3 little men and a lady looking up at the wizard and stuff like that. So it kind of reminded me of the last Astronomy Cafe talking about it.
Ken, can you use your mouse to outline the wizard? I can't see it.
Yeah, we have the cap here, forehead, nose, and he's got his left arm, hand out, and his right hand over here.
Is this your own data, Ken, or are you working?
Yes, yeah, my own
Oh.
data.
Those are beautiful.
It's just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm terrible with stars so far, so I actually have some stars in it, but they're just awful. So
Looks like
I've got to redo the stars and get them down before I put it back in. But it's kind of a nice image, I thought.
well, it looks a little scary. It looks like the Grim Reaper welcoming people into Hades.
Ken, what are the really dark spots? Like the end of the nose and like up by his cap. What are they?
I
Are
think
they?
that's just heavy dust and gas is probably star forming region.
Okay. Yeah, just right in there and
Yeah,
up farther up.
David would probably be better talking to that, but that's probably what it is.
Yeah, I guess a good chunk of it is backlit. I mean, you've got a lot of activity going behind, probably several layers, I guess.
Yeah, it's actually an open cluster, I believe.
Mhm.
Once we got
Could you go back
in.
to Ken? Could you go back to the stars? I just want to see what stars were involved in this.
He's lost the stars.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So there's an open cluster in the middle someplace, Ken?
Yeah, that's what it says. So maybe it's all the stars in here is backlit by the open cluster.
Okay. Great.
We are having an interesting debate on the Astrophoto SIG about abstract art. And I said to the lads, you know, this could qualify as, and I wish there was lads and ladies, but so far not that way. But does this qualify as abstract art? It'd be interesting to fire this into an abstract art competition and see what they say about it. And don't tell them what it is. What do you think?
And could you show some of your work?
I wasn't going to show it. Reg seemed a bit hesitant about talking to it, but I started to do the Elephant's Trunk Nebula and it was going sideways on me, so I tried masking off different areas and just playing with it. And I ended up with this, but because of all these swirls up here and that, I sort of called it a Van Gogh.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Ken, there's a possible explanation for that swirl up in the top. That is a star that is 17 times more massive than the sun, and it's an eruptive variable star, and it's spewing out matter. But I was puzzled by there's a fairly clear rotation around the star, like you normally have rotations around the core of a galaxy or something like that, but a star, not so much. So I went down a rabbit hole that was inspired by Ken, and 2 hours later I crawled out and I discovered a process called the Poynting-Robertson drag. Now it sounds like a show in Las Vegas, but actually it's a physical process where there is a process called aberration of light, where it's a kind of equivalent if you're walking in a rainstorm and you have to tilt your umbrella a little bit. It's the same sort of thing with moving stars and light or dust and light interacting with the dust, and it puts a little bit of drag or force so that the leading edge of the dust gets more radiation than the trailing edge. That generates some heat that slows things down a little bit of radiation pressure, and allows the dust to slowly spiral into the star. And this is what I think is happening there, but we've got an expert on Wednesday night. We've got Dr. Doug Johnstone, who's an expert on the cold, the old, and the dusty. And he's going to give us a great talk then, and I'm going to run this by him, blindside him at that talk. So we'll might have a definitive idea if this is absolutely nonsense or if it's correct. But
So Reggie, you're gonna ask him at the Q&A?
oh yeah, I'm going to pounce on him at on the 4th floor lounge when we have our cookies, coffee, and conversation. So there you go.
Mm.
But thanks so much, Ken, for all of your flamboyant enhancements. I really think that each different treatment brings out different features, and there's no right system because they all highlight different processes that are going on, and there's an awful lot going on in your Elephant Trunk Nebula there. So thanks very much for that. Okay, you're more than welcome. So there's kind of the final one. Okay, that's it for me.
It's great, Ken.
Ken. Those are lovely.
Mhm.
That's very impressive.
So Ken, it looks like you're having lots of fun with narrowband.
Oh, the whole journey's a real treat. Everything. The narrowband's really nice, yeah. But I think I have to go back to one shot to get the stars really nice. I don't know. Talk to Brock and David about it.
Yeah, I think there's a way of doing it with narrowband data, but I wouldn't know how to do it. The easiest probably would be to do an OSC, like just a one-shot color with it.
I think part of my problem is, I'm taking 5-minute exposures on it.
Yeah, which is too long.
And it's probably blowing the stars out.
Yeah.
So if I got some shorter ones, it probably help.
I think Dave Payne uses RGB filters to get his stars.
Yeah.
Well, which
is kind of a one-shot color.
A bit of a cheat, but it's like having a dual narrowband filter.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get them.
Yep.
Thank you very much. That's those are lovely. Very very impressive. So and I'm not sure who has the video lined up. Brock, did you have that, or
I do. I don't know if Dave. I think Dave Robinson's might want to introduce it to give it some bit
Okay.
of backstory. I don't know.
Sure, be glad to give a backstory. This video was put together by Warren Finlay of the Edmonton Center. Warren was the guy that really kicked off the development of the Black Nugget Lake site. Black Nugget Lake is east and a little bit south of Edmonton by about an hour and a quarter, I guess. It's a it used to be the Dodds coal mine, which used to be a coal mine that got converted when it ran out of good coal, got converted into a part of it into a provincial park that Ralph Klein, when he was divesting the province of some of these small provincial parks, turned it over to the local municipality. And they had a campground sort of on the southwest corner of the site, but there was a sort of a barren spot on the north side of the site that Warren and a few others, including me and Roman Eunuch and a couple others, approached the municipality with the idea that we would do a joint project to develop the north side of that site into an observing site. It's probably the closest place to Edmonton that has a pretty dark sky. From there, the only sky glow that you get is a little bit from Camrose, which is about 80 to 100 miles south, and the city of Edmonton, which is to the west. But it's on the Edmonton is now then on the other side of Elk Island Park. So there's not a lot of sky glow out there. It's a pretty dark site. The area is pretty flat, so it wasn't too hard to develop. And so this video gives you a little bit of a overview of how that site was developed and what it ended up with. Of course, the crowning jewel of the site is the installation of the Eunuch Drew telescope, and kudos to Mr. Drew who donated the mirror. He's here tonight on video, and Roman Eunuch who did a whole whack of work putting the telescope itself together, plus a whole raft of people you will see in the video who helped get the site prepared, helped put the building together, and the observatory. We're quite fortunate that the University of Alberta was decommissioning their observatory out at Devon. And so we ended up getting the dome and the service building for their telescope, an 18-foot ash dome, basically for the cost of transporting it. So we've now ended up with I would say, one of the prime observing facilities in Western Canada. And this video gives you a little bit of background to the effort that went into this thing.
Okay.
And many thanks to Bob Drew for the sure and some funding.
What was the municipality that they're close to?
The town is Riley.
Riley.
Yeah, it's south of Big Lake and east of Tofield.
And I'd like to show this documentary, and I hope maybe some of you will get some inspiration from it. Maybe you got some grand astronomy dream or vision for the club that you like to see happen. And what I'd say to you is just make it happen. Just do it. Get a good team together and make it happen. So let's get this show going.
An hour's drive east of Edmonton on the northern edge of the Alberta prairie, fields of grain dominate the landscape. A handful of old grain elevators stand testament to the annual harvest that has supported generations of farmers. Because this farmland remains sparsely populated, the all-night glow of city lights has yet to interfere with the view of the night sky. This allows astronomers to see many thousands of stars and deep sky objects that can't be seen in the glaring lights of Edmonton. Away from city lights, larger telescopes give brighter views of astronomy targets. But larger telescopes cost more and are more difficult to move. As a result, most amateur astronomers settle for telescopes that are smaller and more portable. However, a permanently mounted telescope can be much larger, giving it many times the light gathering capacity. That power would be nullified by city lights. Which is why, nestled among grain fields and pastures, a Royal Astronomical Society of Canada Observatory has risen that will allow amateur astronomers and other members of the public to view the universe through one of Canada's largest dark sky telescopes. The site is located on public land near Black Nugget Lake Park. Since 2004, the site has been the home of the Northern Prairie Star Party, an annual autumn gathering of amateur astronomers.
I was actively searching for a dark sky site to build an observatory, and it was in 2004 at the Northern Prairie Star Party that the idea solidified in my mind that this would be a great spot. So I pitched the idea to the Executive Council of the Edmonton RASC in that fall, and then in 2005 in the spring pitched it to Beaver County Council and was given the green light by both parties to go ahead.
We always thought that it would be nice to have an observatory out there. And originally we were talking about a kind of a roll-off roof style observatory.
Site selection and land use leases were finalized over several years, culminating in clearing and leveling of the site in 2006. The project then came to a halt and lay dormant for several years because budget constraints made the proposed telescope unaffordable. That is until 2016, when a high-quality 32-inch mirror was generously donated by amateur astronomer Bob Drew.
And I thought about selling. Then I recall the star parties I went to where somebody would bring a 25-inch in Vancouver or a 36, and what a privilege it was for people to see a deep sky object brightly, not just a little smudge in a telescope, which is still fun, but something similar to photographs. And what a great experience that was, because you would be seeing nature concurrently with as you look at it, not on a screen, and this was a privilege, I thought. So I thought I would give it to the Edmonton Centre.
With the donated mirror, a newly appointed Black Nugget Lake Observatory team took up the torch. Wasting no time, the team immediately relocated the Society's 18-inch portable telescope to Black Nugget Lake Park, allowing users a taste of what can be seen at this dark site with a good-sized telescope. At the same time, the team worked to raise the funds needed to build the much bigger 32-inch telescope.
We knew that we needed to raise funds for completion of the observatory, and so we did several rounds of funding through the corporate sector, 2 rounds of funding through the corporate sector, both of which failed to generate any money.
After 2 more years of fundraising and permit filing, ground was finally broken in August of 2018 to place the foundations that would support the telescope pier.
The notable thing about the land where we have the Black Nugget Lake Observatory is that it's an old prairie strip mine. And for many years, a number of companies mined it for coal. And then they left. And the interesting thing is that the nature of the subsoils were such that Mother Nature was able to essentially reclaim it herself.
Because of its past history as an open-pit coal mine, soil strength was poor and resulted in the need for much more expensive foundations. This put the project's budget in jeopardy. However, a timely stroke of good fortune, and after dogged grant application writing, the project was awarded a major infusion of grant money, allowing the foundations to be laid just in the nick of time before an early winter cold snap shut the concrete construction window.
Well, we got that done 1 week. The very next week, we got the pier done. The very following week, we got the perimeter. And then within 2 or 3 days, the weather just went horrible. Like we would have been delayed 2 or 3 weeks, and then it would have been too late. We wouldn't have had it done this year at all.
Building a 32-inch telescope on a shoestring budget was only possible because master telescope builder Roman Unk donated his time to design and construct the telescope, saving the project hundreds of thousands of dollars. Total project costs were further brought into the affordable range with the donation of a 14-foot observatory dome from the University of Alberta.
The dome was originally built in 1967 by Ash Dome. It was a steel structure with an aluminum coating on it, and it stood up really well, considering it's 50 years old. But it had some mechanical problems. There was a bit of staining. I think someone had thrown a rock onto the shutter, which I had to pound out. And then we had to replace a bunch of fasteners, and we replaced the wheels. But really, it's still in good shape, so we were lucky.
Squeezing such a large telescope into the donated dome required an unusual folded telescope design.
The folded design actually solved quite a few issues. It shortened the tube length by about 23 inches. It decreased the height of the eyepiece almost 4 feet, which is a huge thing. But what it meant was that we now have a telescope that can fit into an observatory that's 14 feet in diameter, which we got for nothing from the University of Alberta. We would never be able to do that, have a huge rolling roof. People have to be on ladders, 7 feet above the ground.
With the foundations in place, RASC volunteers refurbished the old dome and built the observatory walls. Pushing through unseasonably cold autumn weather with several very early snowfalls, the team fought hard to get as much building done before the winter set in. With the dome roof installed, the team heaved a sigh of relief and celebrated completion of this stage of the construction. As northern lights danced through the long winter nights, Roman bustled about his shop, continuing the long process of building the telescope.
That's in his garage. Yeah.
With time to assess finances, the team now had to deal with several unexpected cost overruns. Generous charitable discounts and support by many suppliers and contractors on the project eased the financial burden.
I love helping out people that have that kind of drive and dedication and grassroots engineering and design, and they want to do it right. So it's great to help out people with that.
Despite financial and in-kind support from various sources, the team was still short of funding to complete the final stages, and more funding applications were filed.
The request to the government of Alberta took a long time to get a decision, and so there were times also where the lack of getting a decision or even a time scale frame for a decision made us wonder if we were going to be able to generate the money for this project. But we kept working on it in trusting that that somehow, some way, we would find the money to make this project occur.
As spring thaw arrived, the team renewed the push and continued work on the observatory buildings through the year. By now, it was apparent that saving money by relying on the volunteer team to do the remaining construction meant that the facility would not be ready in 2019. With the arrival of another winter, Roman continued working on the telescope in his shop, while the rest of the team worked on finishing the interior of the observatory building. The following spring and summer, the team finished readying the observatory to receive the telescope. The arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020 prevented further on-site work, but special permission to access the site was soon obtained to continue working, using precautions to protect against transmission of the virus.
and COVID intervened, but that's all behind us, and I thought I would see if I could accelerate the completion of the project so that people could enjoy using it, and so I decided to augment the previous gift of the mirror and some equipment with some financial assistance to expedite it.
And then of course we did have the issue with the drives. Now that cost us 9 months minimum, almost a year. But we did run into issues with the machine shop in terms of trying to get the accuracy we wanted. And we also had issues with heat treatment. It did cause too much warping, which gave us great pains. Now what's interesting is that I've been keeping it in contact with Bob Drew quite a bit. He knows where things were going. And so toward the end, after so many months, he was even asking, is there any way that he can help us, right? So when I said, no, I kept on battling it down, trying to get the solution, right? It finally gets to the point where, no, the machine shop gave up on it. They didn't want to spend, they had bigger jobs. They were not interested in our work at all. And that's when Bob came through and literally gave the extra funding required to, rebuild the drives in a totally different way. From then on, it was all the other tasks that were left behind. Stuff like assembling of the motors, certain parts of them, adding heaters because things don't work at -40 very well without little heat. Then we did a lot of painting, and aluminum painting was not fun. You have to acid prep it and allodyne it and all that fun stuff. And we had the work crews going. It was interesting to see that, dressed up like spacesuit, like all this evil stuff we were working with. But everybody pulled in. The painting went well. Assembly was pretty good. All the little tiny parts, there's 1,000 little tiny parts, even little things like the brushes to sweep the drive as it's turning to keep it clean. All that machining's been done, the anodizing's been done. The structure for the telescope framework is done. Painting for that was interesting. But it's all done in Endura paint, very, very solid, good stuff.
Nearly 20 years after the project began, and nearly 7 years after the beginning of the construction of the telescope, the UVic Drew telescope was finally lifted into place in the summer of 2023.
Lift day was one of those magical days when everything just goes perfectly. We had prepared for weeks for that day. We had everything tied up, covered up, roped up. The crane operator was 2 hours early. He said, I can come early. You want me to come early? So, yes. We got it all lifted onto the trailer. It went perfectly. Then we drove out to the observatory, and we're standing there scratching our head because, the weather was okay that day, but it wasn't going to be very good for the next few days. The crane operator we'd hired to come out to put everything into the observatory was there just on, I think, on a whim. He says, I don't think the weather's going to be very good tomorrow. How about we do it right now? And he didn't have his truck here. He scooted home, got his crane, and we lifted everything into the dome in jig time. We got the roof closed a half hour before it started to rain. And for the next 3 days, it was lousy. But the dome was shut, The scope was in, everything was tied together. It was perfect.
I think we'd all agree that this is the, quote, little project that grew and got very complicated in the process. Right from, you know, ensuring that we have a sublease agreement with the county and the province for doing such a project, right through to all the building details and the making of the scope itself, and all the cooperation and goodwill of our suppliers and supporters, and many members who've been involved and put in hundreds and hundreds of hours on this project. I think it's quite a wonderful achievement.
Personally, I've enjoyed the camaraderie of all the people that I've been here to work with. They've been great. They've changed my aspect and how I work at the club. Now I'm putting more time in on other projects at the club, and for me, it's been a growth experience all the way through.
It was actually a bit of an emotional moment when I first looked through the completed telescope. I mean, I had been dreaming of this for so long. To actually have that dream fulfilled was pretty amazing. And working with the people on this project over the years has been also a really unexpected bonus and a real privilege to have such great people on the project.
The Black Nugget Lake Observatory houses the largest telescope in Western Canada that the public can look through at a dark site. Its existence is really an amazing feat that demonstrates what can be accomplished by a team of dedicated volunteers with a generous amount of help from supporting communities, companies, and organizations. Offering a world-class window on the universe, views through this telescope's eyepiece will thrill Albertans for generations.
That was wonderful. That was an amazing project, and beautifully put together from the look of it. So thank you very much for presenting that. That's just absolutely wonderful. Did anyone have any questions or comments on the presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Drew.
Hi, I go by Bob, and
Oh, Bob.
I do have some connection to BC, even when I was observing in Edmonton since 1979. And that is, I've gone to Cobau about 7 times in the late 80s and early 90s and met the people in the Okanagan region who ran that wonderful star party. Like, we traveled 14 hours to get there and loved deep sky observing. And back in Edmonton, for some history, around that time, and this was before mass-produced Asian and imported telescopes, people were making their own telescopes. So if their budget was $1,500, they would pay $1,200 for the mirror and good optics from Barry Arnold, and then put the rest together with plywood and sonotube. But the neat thing about those people, what will show in the club records, is that they built the scopes and then they learned together to observe and learn the sky. And at the same time, Edmonton developed close working relationship with the TELUS World of Science, and with a wonderful urban city facility with a large number of good telescopes from the city. So and my personal involvement in all of this was I built and been involved with the 18-inch, which was part of the Barry Arnold telescope there, Paul Campbell and myself. But in the meantime, I did a 20-inch aluminum one that I used for myself. And then everyone wants a bigger scope. And my retirement scope, I located a ULE, ultra low expansion glass with a good provenance, and got Barry Arnold to rejig his shop to make a larger mirror. And he did the secondary, which now became the tertiary, and built the mirror box. Well, I built it, I started on a project. I'm just giving you the genesis of the telescope and how it changed direction for the wonderful instrument it now is. And being an observer, people would chase where the clear skies are. And even now they're doing that in Edmonton, a bit of portability. So what happens is you would haul your telescopes to the various places. And so my intention was to build a giant telescope. I wanted to keep it simple because it was hard to find good optics in the early 90s from somebody who would do good glass for that size. And so Barry got that project going. So I went with a simple Newtonian, which would be rather high at zenith, but a lot of observing isn't done at zenith. And the Los Angeles telescope at Riverside Telescope Making Conference had a 32, where the eyepiece came out at the Nasmyth at the pivot balance point. Bottom line is, the original plan was to do an aluminum one. It would be under $500. It would be pounds. It would be transportable in a giant plumbing van or a motorcycle trailer and follow the sites for public use. And as mentioned, you'd need a roll-off roof, which would be simple to use, but it would never have the precision of a permanent telescope. So for arthritis and other reasons, I decided to donate it. And I met Roman. This was during a lull in the project that you saw in that wonderful documentary. And so, well, if you guys are looking for a project here, I'm prepared to donate this. And I won't add any, because that telescope was a simple Newtonian, but very accurately made. It was about 60% finished, but you can change it and do it the way you want it. No, make any modifications, because the optics were a wonderful pair. And so the rest of it developed to a folded. So Roman looked at it, he inspected it because it hadn't been out of the box that I had it carefully stored in. And I accepted it, and the rest of the part of the project fell together and moved along. And the dome appeared from indirectly from the University of Alberta. But when you say they got the dome, that's what they got. They got the dome. When you saw that tape, which is remarkable about the 7 people in those stages, is they built the curved walls. They fabricated it, they supervised it. Each of these things took an hour and a quarter to drive out to do the standing in the mud. The records of their contribution was absolutely amazing. In the meantime, Roman, an amateur astronomer, ATM, has made a couple of very respectable telescopes. He also has a full machine shop in his double garage. And with a suffering wife, they ended up taking it over for the project. And but he had like a huge lathe as big as a car. He had other equipment that was professional quality. He's also an electrical engineer and so forth, and had a high standard, which he maintained through the whole building of it. And he worked in steel rather than aluminum because it's inexpensive, easy to weld and fabricate. So there's every justification for it. And
that's also, Bob, that's also because you have to remember that his motto is more steel.
I think, yes, it is solid. And there's something that would work. Like, I'm interested in lightweight design, portability, like lightweight sports cars and this or that. But the stability here for a permanent mount has all the benefits of repeatability and a good a good tracking mount and system. And Roman kept an unusually high standard. He kept up his machining to perfection. So even though the amounts are large and the components, some are large, they had some challenges in having fabrication by some of the professional people that had to be chased down. But the neat thing about it is I went to my family and I went to the dedication mid-September for the Alberta Star Party, or sorry, Northern Prairie Star Party. And they had an evening for the sponsors night. Then they had a wonderful barbecue and a dedication evening. So we had a few peeks through it for marginal skies and so forth. But it was a wonderful culmination for that committee, who were so relieved to finally come to the end of the project after many challenges. So they were incredibly dedicated and really worked their way through it. And then you might wonder, though, in the meantime, through this arthritis, I had to leave astronomy for the last 10, 15 years. But what happened is, and I've lurked there and also at the Victoria Club and with COVID and all. But as you see, what's happened in Edmonton is there's small aperture, very high quality astrophotography going on, including it's so vibrant that a few people from Calgary have joined the Edmonton group. And you have the same type of stuff going on here. So it's a different thing than the tradition of large aperture, which goes back a ways. But the whole idea was, if it can look through a large scope and see something brightly, as observing the activity of observing visually is the experience of it and seeing nature, where if you see out there's a constellation and you look in and see all these various I like deep sky and the variation that you have. And when you have a beginner try it, or it might influence a child or even an experienced person, for that indulgence of seeing something very far, or new apparitions that come up like comets just being discovered. So it opens up a new thing, and this allows the Edmonton Club to graduate from or expand from the wonderful urban observatory, plus the public star parties that they do run in Jasper and at Beaver Lake, to also have a permanent one, which will work through the county of Beaver Lake, and also the people there. So they'll have an indulgence, so they worked out the operations for it. They have a very strong manual, because it is a complex machine. And when I went there, and Roman gave me about a 5-minute guided tour there, of the finished product, which is absolutely magnificent. The finish on it is phenomenal. But the large yoke you saw, all the tolerances are amazingly close. So when he just slewed it around, it was perfectly silent. There wasn't any buckling or shaking or trembling. It was so solid, for what Roman said, build it heavy, like the Bismarck, I think. But what happened is, you could, if you wanted, while steadying yourself, because it was about 2.5 steps up for zenith or for higher up, you could steady yourself by just putting your hand on the mount. It was that steady if you wanted, but of course there'll be the ladder. It was sound and it moves smoothly. And they'll just finish up some final commissioning and coordinating it with the dome rotation and everything. So what's remarkable, it was done by amateurs and with some jobbed out stuff. And it's there for their use and for deep sky and for broader use for education for everybody. So it's a real achievement for them to put it together, and it's a viable institutional instrument, not just an ATM project. So they were so relieved to reach commissioning date after such a long journey. So it was a pleasure to meet the people and see them enjoy the commissioning September. So that's about all my comments.
I'll give you a very quick overview of Roman, who is the key driver behind this thing. Roman is a mechanical engineer by training. He started out in honors physics, and after about 8 months in that program, he decided his brain didn't work the same as the people in honors physics, so he went into mechanical engineering. He worked for the provincial government almost as long as I did. And Roman was started in the mechanical engineering department, eventually ended up working for me for a little over 10 years. His role as a mechanical engineer was as the building electronic systems control specialist. So he knew heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. He knew all the electronics to make that stuff work. Plus, he has this machining ability because his first job, his employer stuck him in the machine shop for a year. So he has this amazing mix of skills, and he is dedicated to whatever he starts at. This project would never have happened without Roman's skills and ability and his dedication to the job. And also Bob's dedication to making sure that the project went ahead. I think the group in Edmonton have been very fortunate to have those people help them out through this whole process. Very fortunate to build a good relationship through Warren Finley with the municipality to make this work for not just the club, but for the public who want to come out and look through it. I think it's just an outstanding project.
So Robert, Gary Sedun here. I have a few questions for you. Where on earth do you find such a beautiful primary mirror of that size?
Well, I did a new one. I wanted, I was aware of all the difficulties of temperature change, warping, and everything else. So I knew I wanted to find an exotic glass. So I started researching and there was ULE and also Astronomy from Russia. A person I know, a friend of mine who does refineries around the world, he could have picked up one in Russia or had it shipped if I wanted one, but there were more bubbles in the stuff from Astronomy from Russia. So by dumb luck, about that time, and I was doing up a lot of reading, I took up ATM magazine, and there's so many resources. In a magazine, would you call Starry Night, just like the book, the advertised used equipment. And he was a professional engineer in the Aerospace Space Sciences Center who had one that he was letting go from the firm. It was the provenance was all good. He was an engineer. And so I found the 32. I wanted something between 30 and 36 inches. I didn't want an ultra thin, like the Coulter mirrors we all started with or stuff. So I found it by an ad. It sounded legitimate and trustworthy, and then I had it. Then I had Barry Arndt. So I found an ad in the used telescope equipment. Back then, this was before internet, so you got a booklet called Starry Night every month. And then the next thing is I didn't want to build the mechanics on it until you had a good mirror. And back then there were stories of very many clubs focusing their funds on let's build a telescope and we're going to have optician firm ABC build a scope, and they would come up with a 25, 27 inch or something, 30 inch, and it would be a disappointment on it. So I made sure that after Barry worked very, very hard, Barry Arnold, and achieved a good high quality mirror and had it interferometer tested and everything independently in Chicago. I shipped it up there to make sure that that part was done, and then went on with the project. Bottom line is it was advertisement.
How about that? So what wavelength did you get on your main mirror?
I can't remember I'm not trying to be evasive on it. It was a stroke because if you're saying, oh, it was a 1/20th, was of course not on a 32. I'm not sure. Well, be diffraction limited. I haven't read it for 10 years. Okay. I'm not going to be evasive. The club has all those papers. The Thrill was around 90. It showed straight lines. It showed all the focal testing, crisp and line and all that. They have all that there. So the beauty of that is that was good. The mirror, Barry made the 5.7. It was going to be a 14% obstruction secondary. And he carved it out of a block. I just bought a new block of ULE glass from Corning, and he just fashioned the whole optical thing. That became the tertiary, and to make the folded system, Roman did the ray tracing and the designing to put in the secondary up at the top where the spreader or where the spider normally is, down to this as a tertiary. So that one, Barry said he'd make it to 10th, and it was that or better. He tested it, and I trusted that. So they
You don't have to live in.
No, knowing Barry Arnold, who quite frankly, Barry passed away some time ago, but he made mirrors in his shop in Sherwood Park, and he and Roman and I, between the construction of the mirrors and everything, between us three, we made probably 12 telescopes over the course of about 10 years, ranging in size.
Very impressive.
Down to 6.
So, Robert, do you live in Victoria?
Yeah, we moved here 8 years ago. Get away from the cold, to be honest.
You don't happen to live on a farm with good seeing, do you?
No, the arthritis is what it's caused me. I had a beautiful 20-inch F4 aluminum that I really enjoyed building and used for 25 years, and then I just arthritis I had to let it go, and then the same with the 32, which I wanted to try to continue. And so I had to leave that alone. So I even had a traveler telescope. I remember I took it out here. I was it's because it's a lovely portable telescope. And I remember taking it out to, where do you go and look at the July 4th fireworks at, not Eagle Ridge. Yeah, right. So, but the arthritis has caused me to leave the top, but it hasn't left me intellectually. I follow the web and every discovery they make on it for the new stuff we learn, and I've lurked through the club. Edmonton, I have to admit, I respected the club there because they make the best out of what they can with the eternal twilight in the summer and the cold weather and so forth. And they're kind of a can-do kind of guys and girls who travel on it. And now the astrophotography is, anyway, I'm getting off topic here.
Yeah, good. Well, welcome to Victoria.
Well, yeah, there was another difference here. You have, is there a 25 or 30-inch that the club has ancillary access to in addition to the occasional one with the Plasket? Is there not a large telescope you have?
We have a 20-inch obsession.
He's meaning Pearson College.
Oh, Pearson College. Oh, how big are the ones out at Pearson?
It's a 25-inch.
That would be Jack's old one, right?
Yes.
So you have that large telescope. And in Edmonton, what happened is the observers, if it wasn't an urban object, they would travel out about an hour or longer, or hour and a half or two to Caroline in the foothills. So here you have your occasional star parties, and it's a slightly different type of, but your serious ones were the ones that used to go to Coba. Anyway, the beauty of that scope is it's got a permanent place for public education and to give everybody a GWOW shot view of it. And Roman's execution just given them a great usable potential. And how it goes in the future will depend on how the club sees that they want to use it for future use.
Did anybody have any more questions they wanted to, or anything else they would like to ask Bob about the project? Or
I just find it interesting that I was going to bring up something to ask some of the imagers that has to do with that Barry Arnold mirror scope, because it became a topic on the Sketchers Forum on the RASC national site, and it was one of the people at that inaugural weekend did a sketch of the Crescent Nebula. And then I, being who I am, asked why she didn't see some features in it that I could see in a much smaller telescope. But we're trying to figure out if it might have been the filter that was being used. And so I was going to ask some of the imagers who have broken down the components of the outer shell of that Wolf-Rayet nebula as to why. Because she'd only used an O3 filter and she couldn't see that kind of cross-hatching that happens over that bubble. And I was just wondering if it had to do with, whenever I've seen it, it's always been with like UHC style narrowband filter, which also shows the hydrogen. Do any of the imagers know?
I would guess that that's probably true because that telescope has not been in place long enough for them to develop a set of filters that would give you a broader range of what you're going to see.
I think for visual, they have the standard filters. I can also say they were chasing down marginal, there were some good nights. Warren caught a good night, a few other ones, because a scope that large is sensitive to, when the skies are brighter, grayer and stuff, as opposed to dark. The other is with the crescent, you talking for her sketching? Well, the O3, on a big scope, it shows mottling in the bottom. Actually, the crescent, like we're talking about 6-8, the crescent.
Yeah, the crescent nebula.
Yeah. Well, what happened is I remember when we were starting observing with the COBA, a 12-inch could bring you the crescent, which is a part of the band, but the bigger part is the lobe below it. To me, that thing looks like a padlock, and with all the mottling below the whole thing, and then you got the smaller extensions, which people are showing with astrophotography. So I think that may have been a vestige of her seeing, because they've been they have better, there are other better sketches too going on, which is interesting for what you bring up, because in addition to the astrophotography, which is producing interesting projects, they're also going back to traditional sketching.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to figure it out online and looking at like some papers and things like that. And it seemed that the outer ring has more oxygen to it, whereas that cross-hatching that appears over the whole globe seemed to be more of a hydrogen aspect. So that's why I was thinking if she was only using an O3, because she was seeing a full circle.
Yeah,
but nothing in the middle.
Yeah,
but I can see that cross-hatching with just a 12-inch.
Yes.
That might be, as Bob says, that it might be that the seeing might not be steady enough.
Yeah.
There's a small lake there, so at certain times of year you'll get a little bit of heat rise off the water late at night. So it's possible that might have been it. Also, we get some high winds over that area. In the tree up to the video, you saw a whole bunch of birds flying overhead. Yeah, that's the annual migration of the sandhill cranes, and they go over by the thousands. And the reason they do is because there's some upper winds that carry them on the migration through that area. So it's probably seeing as well.
Do they keep the is it open all through the whole year, or do they sort of really
don't use it much in the summer, because if you know where Edmonton is, 43 degrees north, it don't get dark in the summer. So they'll use it mostly in the late fall and winter.
And this is its first winter, right?
Yeah, first winter. Yeah. Although, people like me and Warren and company, we would go out there with our own portable instruments and for the Northern Prairie Star Party. It can be a really good site if the seeing is good. And the other problem it's getting better. The other problem we've always had in the observing sites around Edmonton is aurora. But the northern magnetic pole has migrated off to the northeast from where it used to be. And so we don't get the aurora we used to. I know that there were times when I was out at Blackfoot, which is not north of where the disc telescope is, when you could read a newspaper by aurora. Yeah. It was so bright. So I think that's going to ease up because of where the magnetic pole has moved to. It is a good site. It will probably stay that way. There's not a lot of stuff around it to disturb the air as well. There's no big buildings or anything anymore. So it'll take a while to get used to using it, I'm sure.
There's an article on it on the recent journal.
It sounds like a wonderful site. I think I'm going to have to put it on my list for the next vacation trip. So see if we can
If
stop
you
by.
can coincide with the Northern Prairie Star Party, it's a great time to go.
Time of year is that happen?
September, mid-September-ish.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. That was very interesting. And as I say, it looks like a lovely site. And kudos to everybody who was behind it and put it up. It was a lot.
Jim, it looks like Lauri's hands is up.
Lauri, yes, Lauri, go ahead.
Hi, I just wondered whether or not the Edmonton Center would be interested in showing that video possibly at the General Assembly in May to the group. I mean, I feel privileged in watching it here in Victoria, but I'm wondering if I think it would be great to show to all the delegates at the GA if there's something that we could somebody that I could talk to about showing that then, and maybe having a bit of a presentation as well.
I can drop a note to Warren Finley about that if you wish.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
I'll do that.
Good.
By the way, we see Warren out here periodically. His mom and dad live out here now, so every once in a while he drops by.
When is the annual?
There's one small interesting sidebar about Warren. I think he's a physics or astrophysics professor, but he is an avid observer and he travels to observe all over the world. But he also has certain projects, and he recently personally completed all 2,500 Herschel objects over a number of years for Perseverance. He just finished the project a few months ago, to great relief after a lot of ebbs and flows. There's probably only about 10 or 12 people who have done that whole project. So he's an accomplished observer, and he has his own respectable telescope. But the most interesting thing about his travels is he had a 10-inch very portable one that he could take apart and backpack. So he's been to France and Australia and various other places by helicopter and so forth. So he's an observer in the traditional sense, plus respectable astrophotography, plus photography. I don't know, what do you call it, where you merge the landscape and the galaxies? And you'll see what in that wonderfully edited thing he put together, how crisp the editing is, and all the deep sky objects he made to make even Alberta's prairies look good. So
his most recent accomplishment is he completed what he called the double marathon in Australia. He did a Messier marathon and ran a marathon in one night. Interspersing observing with running.
The word overachiever comes to mind.
Yeah, overachiever. Yeah.
He's actually a mechanical engineer. He's a professor at the University of Alberta. He specializes in aerosol delivery of medications to patients. What you call a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
Well, his video skills are definitely on display there. I was thinking that was a professionally produced video, and
yeah, that's Warren.
Yeah, very good.
Color balance was perfect.
He also likes Baroque music, and if you look at the credits, he composed a few of the parts and participated in some of the music in the backdrop on that. So
the only downside to that, Bob, is he still plays the bagpipes.
No.
Yeah, that's true. It did contaminate the star parties, didn't it?
That's a real black spot. I just, you mentioned our Herschel catalog. We should mention that Bill Weir has also observed all of the Herschel catalog. He did that, completed that about 4 years ago. Is that right, Bill?
Yeah, I can't even remember how long ago it was. Probably longer now. It was some of it was a slog.
Yeah.
Because there's so much in one season. The spring galaxies. That takes a long time.
Did you travel much to get some of the objects?
No, I didn't want to because I wanted to do it from a similar latitude. So it was here would be the most south that I was. And at Kobo's a bunch, some at Merritt, but mostly here. I'm outside of town.
Do we have any other comments or questions for Bob or anything else related to the presentation? Well, in that case, I'd say thank you very much, Bob. That was very interesting. Thank you for bringing that forward, and thank you. I think, Brock, I'm not sure if you were the one who was actually running the video, but thank you for that, for setting it up.
Dave Robinson, thanks for contacting me.
Yep. Look forward to hearing more about the seeing from there in the future. Does anybody else have anything they would like to bring up before we close down?
Oh, maybe I'll just do a little follow-up to my talk last week about Hubble.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fairly straightforward. Hubble is back in operation. They had some problems with the gyroscopes, but they now kind of understand what the issue is, and so they've been able to bring it back into operation. So it came back, I think, on Friday or something like that. So it's back into operation, and they'll periodically have issues with the gyroscopes, I would imagine. But that's good, and I'm just gonna show you this. And let's see. You should have that. Do you just have the photo there?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the latest thing from the Webb telescope of Cassiopeia A supernova. And it's kind of an appropriate thing for this time of year, I think. And if you look on the Webb telescope site, you will see. I think they have a few variations on this because they took this image through a couple of different cameras. So. Anyway, that's basically what I had to say.
Thank you. It's a lovely image. It's good to hear that the Hubble is back online. Still remember listening to the launch and process when they were releasing it from the space shuttle back when I first started with the phone company back in the early '80s. So it's always makes me happy to hear that it's still operating. Would anyone else have, or does anyone else have anything they would like to bring up?
I just wanted to remind people that the talk at UVic on Wednesday night begins at 7:30. And it will be in the Bob Wright Center in room B150, B150. That's the Fleury Hall. And please do not go into room A104, which is our normal session, because they're having exams in that room at the time. But please try and make it up there. It's going to be an entertaining talk, and we hope to see you there.
Thank you. Is that on the first floor or the second floor?
First floor.
Yeah, it's just further, if you go in the front doors of the building, our room's right near those. If you walk further back past a corridor where there's glass outside windows on the right, it's behind it, so it just keep going.
It's the one that's really large.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, just a minute, I have.
Kathy has a question?
Yeah, I do, for Lauri.
Yes.
I was just gonna ask, I missed the pancakes, which is probably a good thing, but I was going to bring some money, and I just thought, well, who do I give it to, and what is it, if I'm doing a check, what do I put on it?
Oh, it would go to the RASC Victoria Center.
Okay.
And thank you very much. And are you going to be coming to the to UVic on Wednesday?
Yes, I'll be there, so I'll give you a check.
Yeah, or if Doug Hardy is there, Doug Hardy is the treasurer, and he would be able to take that, and that would be okay too.
Okay, and the person that takes the money usually is who? I missed that. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. Okay. Wrong organization here. Oh dear. If you want, you can, sorry, it would go to the Friends of the DAO. If it's going for a donation for the Friends, it would go to the Friends of the Dominion Astrophysical Observatory. The FDAO is fine. And you can give it to me on Wednesday. I'm sorry. Oh dear.
Okay.
Too many hats.
Yes, that's right. Oh, I can just do it like that. That's easy.
Thank you.
Just showing Kathy the online, there is a website for donating.
Yes, you can do it there too. Yes, for sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I was also just going to say to everybody kind of online here that when I was at the museum, the last time I was at the museum, I was talking with Kim Goff, who is one of the people responsible for the at the museum for programs, and she was asking whether or not we would like to come back to the museum for Astronomy Day, and was wanting to know whether or not we wanted to book the room. So I gave her the date so she could go back and check and check with her group, but I said, well, like, we hadn't made any decisions, but we would get back to her. But so just kind of put that up in your mind, is that they would be very happy to have us back. So if we have to kind of do some thinking from the group and from anybody that's interested as to whether or not we go back to UVic like we did last year, or whether we go back to the museum and do it again there. Like a different audience, a different set of things. There's lots of backup and lots of technical support at the museum. So anyway, there's good things about both places, but we need to make a decision fairly quickly. Okay, that's all.
Well, we're coming on to about 20 after 8. If nobody else has anything they would like to add or any questions, I think perhaps we can call it an evening. And once again, say thank you very much to Bob for bringing that video in. That was very interesting, definitely an inspiration.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bob.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.